Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to today's edition of the Hotline Show. My name is Roger Sturiabo. I want to begin from a point of apology. The previous week we weren't able to have this show air at this particular time on this particular station because of some of the issues, specifically electricity and all of those things, infrastructure, and those resources were not in position to support. And so we weren't able to have that discussion. But we are here today, and we're going to have the same conversations. We'll catch up from where we should have the last week, and we're going to build up on a number of current issues that are happening. And as usual, I have the guest who decided that he's going to dedicate his time every Monday evening to make sure that he sort of takes us through a number of issues. One who is experienced at a number of issues. Most of them are social, political, even economical and international, the way things work around the world. And so he's joining us today. And today we're going to be talking about the fact that he's also a leader in the Uganda People's Congress. And of course, in light of the recent ruling that was given concerning your leadership, today that is what we're going to largely be talking about. But we'll also talk about the G77 and Allied movement and Uganda's chairmanship and chairing the summit in the next year, what all of that means for the country. But before we get there, I wanted to first of all, you welcome, sir. Thank you so much for making the time. For the UPC, what is the future now? The ruling has come. It's what all of us have been waiting for. We have had conversations here before. It has taken long, but here it is. What should we then expect, for example, all of us that are looking at the UPC right now?
Thank you for having me always. And yes, it's sad that we're not able to be here last week.
Yes.
I was very disappointed because you remember your station is broadening in terms of its fan base. I know people who look forward to joining us on these programs on Mondays, but also when you already told people that you're going to be in some spaces, people reschedule their very busy times. But not surprisingly, as you mentioned, that one of the major reasons was because of infrastructure challenges, meaning particularly energy. That's a shock that Kampala can have major energy problems, particularly power failures, and that are so often, and that it does have power challenges that you possibly not compare with what's happening even in the little Chigaris of this world, or perhaps even sometimes possibly some people even say Juba is much better. So that's important, and that is why it's very important that the father of political parties in Uganda, Uganda People's Congress, must have its house in order so that it's able to provide the leadership and direction that this country badly needs, and that this country particularly will need in the future post Mr. Museveni. What future? No, UPC is the future. I've always said UPC is the future of this country. UPC is the political future of this country. Very important ruling, very definitive, very decisive. Shockingly, there are some friends of mine who are playing legal gymnastics with the ruling, but obviously it's understandable, of course, people being defensive. 5 Supreme Court justices ruled that Jim McKenna has not been indeed and was not elected president as ruled by the Court of Appeal 3 years ago. So Supreme Court justices, 5 of them, agreed with 3 Court of Appeal justices who agreed with Justice Nyanzi in the High Court. Yes. So quite clearly it has been definitive that Jimmy played with the Constitution of Uganda People's Congress emotively, whatever the circumstances, whatever his reasons. He broke the Constitution of Uganda People's Congress. He did not consider the political implications, nor in particular, very important, did he consider the legal implications. And so that sort of is where it is. What does it mean? It basically means that Jimmy has been, as confirmed by the Supreme Court, been in Uganda House for the last 8 years illegally. And that people who've been calling Jimmy president unlawfully and illegally, and that the party therefore technically has not had, does not have, and has not had a legally mandated president since Olaro Tunu. What it also means, therefore, was that the elections that Olaro Tunu had conducted or attempted to conduct in 2015 was sort of the last election that would have given us a clear mandate. Unfortunately, because it, was challenged, it means that the last elections Uganda People's Congress had, which delivered a mandated president directly and accepted by the delegates, was Olaro Tunu in 2010. So you can see how bad it is. So that's 13 years ago. Now, when Jimmy obviously won majority of the district council nominations, as a part of the process, not the end process, he was expected, if at all, notwithstanding, in case there was no other challenges, to be considered for nominations formally at the delegates conference, and voted for by the delegates conference, and so therefore confirmed as party president. That delegates conference would have had to be called by the president, which president was then Olaro Tunu. Jimmy jumped through that process, mobilized a number of delegates. Obviously, he was generally quite popular at the time. Delegates are neither here nor there. They're not legal experts. In many of them would possibly be very emotive. UPC members are very, very desperate. In fact, sometimes rather very impatient because of the history of how we have been beaten, how they've been beaten. They couldn't wait to change. Although sometimes these days, I feel some of them rather tired, so they don't express using the kind of energy that I expect them to. So party members in 2015-16, the person who had been nominated is Jim McKenna, is calling them for a UPC meeting. And even today, anybody's, even you can come to my Toro and they hear there's a young man called Rogers who's called a meeting for UPC in Nagongera, people will come. You know, people will come. It does not.
Is that because of lack of a defined direction, or is it because they are so?
That's, I think, is an important point. Lack of direction is neither here nor there, but to an extent it's a fact. And I don't want to make it very academic at this early end of the conversation, because you're absolutely right. I have been a member of the Labour Party, the British Labour Party, for a long time, sister party of UPC. But I was also an official of the Labour Party for a very long time, from the branch to constituency to district party, including a very privileged member of the Centenary Delegates Conference of 1999, party conference as they'll call them. The party meetings are so precise that it would be very strange if they said there's a meeting, party meeting taking place in the town hall, in a particular hall. People will first of all ask, but who has called it? Oh, that is strange. Is it a party meeting? Is it a rally? Is it for a branch? Is it for constituencies? What will it? So people ask those questions. At the moment, the manner in which NRA has messed up politics and political parties, you know, people will not think about it in that way, because, as I said, it's been so long. But also, on the other hand, the clarity of who's who, structurally, which you're raising, is very, very important. I want to say it at the outset that in the event that I am cleared and elected, formally cleared as president of Uganda People's Congress, that's one of the things I've actually promised to do, but I want to say it here, because I was going to say it much later. And that is a question of leadership, question of direction, question of discipline and organization, you know, and sense of clarity of authority. So the party doesn't have that.
You first told it just a little bit.
Sorry.
Let me interrupt your train of thought. You do mention the NRM and how it has messed up all of this politics. But I would also assume that UPC, having been one of the founding parties, literally the mother party of this country,
yes,
has had principles, has had values that it holds on to. So much so that I would not expect the NRM to have penetrated to that extent. Because at the end of the day, for example, now if you're going for the presidency, the thing you're going to be telling people is that, look, the UPC has been one of those parties that have been here, that have founded this motherland, and literally a lot of things you are building on to have been, the basis has been the UPC. And so if the people themselves from the UPC can easily be swayed in that sense, do you think it gives much confidence to more other Ugandans to think UPC then will do much good in, for example, delivering the services they need to the country?
I think I understand your question. I don't want you to misunderstand UPC members. I think the observation I was making was about the state of polity in this country, and also relative weakness in terms of structures, including of UPC. As I said, the last time an organized branch meeting was taking place in Nagongera, and everyone else would know there's a branch meeting, the branch chairman in Nagongera, was possibly 1984-85. You know what I'm saying? There have been other subsequent meetings, but as a result of the weaknesses created by NRA, we are trying just to revise. That's what I'm trying to say. On the one hand, structurally generally weak. But two, here I'm talking about people also have been so thirsty and hungry that since 1984-85, you know, parties have not had the privilege and opportunity to go and turn up and say, UPC branch meetings takes place in Nagongera Community Center, which I see is now turned into a cattle thing because it's now been broken, you know. In fact, in my whole West Bodama, the only community center built by UPC, which still stands, although it's in bad shape, is the one of Nagongera. Nagongera one was the biggest in the country at the time, and much more structurally different. The rest of the others have fallen off. So those are places where I say party meetings will take place, or occasionally in some primary school hall as arranged. You know, that's what party meetings do take place around the world anyway. So since it has not been that, people, I'm saying, are just literally hungry and thirsty. So if you hear that there's a meeting taking place, UPC meeting in some railway shed, they will go. The issue is not even about the top leadership. The issue is that people, one, are yearning and hungry, but two, people are not yet very sure because of the organizational question. That's what I'm trying to say. And that does not and should not apply to UPC only, to apply to all political parties. So really still I take it back to the ban on political parties by NRA. But I think when you talk about swaying members into UPC, UPC was actually the last political party to be broken. The first political party to be broken was DP. DP broke themselves together with Museveni. They thought they were dancing something to, they're dancing on the grave of UPC. Then followed, could say, by CP as the traditional political party. But the one that Museveni broke in the bush was his own, called UPM, Uganda Patriotic Movement. But Museveni can't get it. Museveni should also be ashamed, man. He just killed his political party. And now turned...
He built it into another...
he built it into an eating movement, meat movement, Uganda national, whatever kind of meat eaters, whatever called movement. So they did the NRA thing for himself and his firm. But as a political party, UPM was supposedly a political party. And there are a number of people who joined UPM. There are not many, but actually some of the people who joined UPM were people who genuinely thought left-leaning politics, particularly those who were not, without prejudice, from the West, who thought they were joining their brother. And I'm saying this very deliberately, There are a number of other people from the East and the North, not many, but they thought they were joining a new political party with the left-leaning thinking, and that was UPM. So, no, Mr. Museveni deserves to pay back these guys and include for their trauma, because we don't know what happened to UPM. So anyway, so fast forward, the rest of the emergent political parties, organizations were now FDC later, and then you can talk about the big ones, FDC, then NUP more recently, and of course then ANT. So the challenges in those political parties are representative of the institutional structural challenges facing this country. UPC was alone. So we're alone in being beaten. The Besiges, the Mundus, all of them beat us. In the bush, the beat us after the bush, and it was all our fault with DP. So up to 1995, 96, when Semogero left, we were still subject to be beaten. And so 1995, 96, that the conversation with the Semogero came up, when Semogero realized that actually NRA was taking them nowhere, so we need to reclaim back political parties. And from then on, to be fair to Semogero the late, and some leaders in DP, we worked together now to return multi-partism. So all along we had been very lonely. But now from 1995, as we're now recoming, in terms of our name, don't even hear about the 1996 NRA elections where Museveni uses the Obote Bogi, to discredit Semogero. So you can see those. That was how devilish she had presented UPC, and it's not easy to undo that. What it means is the young people like yourselves, born in the year 2000 plus, or particularly in the 1990s, you don't know anything else but except negative things about UPC. I was just talking to a young, beautiful lady today who's just about 30 this afternoon actually, and I was telling her that the entirety of her own home base, was possibly 95, 96, 97% UPC. And said, really? I said, yes. And then I had to repeat to her, look, go and ask your grandparents, in the entirety of your sub-region, it would be 95% UPC support.
Back then, yes.
In my Tororo is actually possibly less, because Tororo DP had a strong, without Catholic root. So possibly you can talk about 20% support for DP as of 1980 general elections, although that had sort of dwindled a bit. But in many of those places, that's high. So really, that's no longer the UPC. So by the return to multipartism, some children of UPC were feeling embarrassed to associate with the UPC. So fast forward, it's not surprising that structurally we were that weak. What saved us is what I've told this program before, that we are an idea that can't die, so we couldn't die. But also we were leaders of the campaign against NRA and their friends from July 1985. So we've been campaigning since then today. So that keeps us not only alive in a small way, but alive and consistent and coherent, so meaning that unbreakable. Where we are today, we are weaker than we were then, but we are clearer than any other political party, because, as I said, we are glitter as gold, and we are nearly the nearest gold you can associate with as a political party.
Would you then conclude that, as you said, you are weaker at that point, even up to now, you would say? Is it? Do you then think that this whole the period of Akena, to bring it back to recently, the period of Akena, do you think it has affected your support base across the country? Would you say that is one of the reasons, or it had happened even long before Kenya became president.
I think many of
himself
that's a very question. I think many of the people who opposed Kenya would be very happy if I said so. But I am Ochieno of UPC. Just like some people would also say be opposed to Olara, would say possibly Olara destroyed the party base. I think I'll try to be as objective as possible. Olara's leadership came with its own hope for many people, including many non-UPCs, and they made their arguments. But at the same time, there are many people who were so fundamentally opposed to Olara. They said, and I mean, they're telling people, telling us, they're being very open that they will not vote for UPC, for Olara, for various reasons, including those associations of 1985, which Olara could not shake off, unfortunately, in a particular way. Then there are people who said they would not vote for Jimmy because as far as Jimmy's emergence, they considered him a Bottas family, and they were saying, oh no, it's not a monarchy.
It's not a family.
You know, so there are people who also say that. So those are numbers. Now, how much of those numbers do you translate, in numbers that you add by virtue of the pluses as you of popularity or your ability to recruit? So both Olara and Akena had that. Then much later, in Jimmy's case, Jimmy started his dubious deal with Mr. Museveni, him and his wife. That fundamentally affected the party and the party's image.
Is that a factor, though? Has it?
It's a major factor. It's a major factor. I attended a major function, an NGO function actually, and I met a senior member of an NGO group organization who these people are not supposed to be. They don't present themselves politically. But we had a chat over break, and I was a consulting lead in a particular event, and so I teased this lady. But as I was teasing her, she didn't hear what I was saying. But a friend of mine was telling her that Mr. Ochieno is the UPC president, and you asking you to join UPC, something like that, and she just told me that, look, I don't have to join UPC. She said, I'm UPC, but I'm not UPC with the NRM. Now, this is a rounded 30-something-year-old major professional nationally. She said it was extremely definitive. So she said, no, I don't have to be recruited to the UPC. I am UPC.
But not the UPC.
But not the UPC of NRM. And my friend laughed and she had to say that actually Ochieno is not that of UPC. So basically, that is a representation. So there are people, many people, of thought, of clarity. No. So that is that. And then the younger people like yourselves and many people of your age group, including some of the people in your circles, when I tease them, because I recruit continuously, people tell you that now, which UPC?
Which one are we
of Akena's or of Walobiri? Of Akena's or the one of Akena with Museveni? Is it UPC NRA? So these things have had an impact, on us. And the problem is that some of our colleagues in UPC are living in denial by disregarding these factors. So citizens don't want to be taken for a ride when Museveni took them for a ride and went and broke people's necks in Luwero and sank our nation and broke what UPC did. So we need to be open and honest with people. But beyond that, then came the fact that Museveni goes to Betamong, home, to sit on Obote's chair. Many members of the UPC felt insulted by that. And Jimmy ought to have addressed that regardless of his leadership position. That has affected the perception and members of the party and some other who would others be back to the party, particularly the young people like yourselves whose grandparents were UPC. You're waking up to realize that Museveni took you guys for a ride. You want to return to this political party. How do I return to the party of my grandfather when he's actually now in deal that I can't explain with the people whom I'm trying to leave or people whom I'm trying to refuse to join? So am I joining UPC, a political party? So that fact, that's another factor. That's it. And then, after that, then Jimmy goes through the electoral process, and then after that, seeks to campaign for Museveni himself and his wife Betty, and then Ruth Ochieno, who Museveni is a representative in Canada at the moment. They did that. And then after that, Jimmy says he's not going to stand for election in 2016, and they campaign for Museveni. And the same thing in 2020, the perception, therefore, that UPC. So is it UPC? So unfortunately, Jimmy's presence in those positions have impacted on the membership, leadership, and recruitment of UPC and the perception about Uganda People's Congress. Extremely important. And you can't shy away from these things. Then next, which is very quickly to conclude the Jimmy element, is then how he became a leader. He pushes Olaro Tunu from Uganda House, chasing him really, in a very unfortunate way. Many people who supported him then, some of them regret today, but many of them who have this emotional thing about Olara versus Jimmy, some of them agreed with him and said, no, you don't break the rules simply because you didn't disagree with somebody. So that is one. So that impacted on the party's image, because the last political party, UPC were the party of ideas, the last political party to demonstrate that was bound to be UPC. So that happened. And then fast forward, he calls this delegates conference, your first question, and he calls a meeting, turns into a delegates conference, and then he calls himself a president-elect, then becomes allegedly president, then he goes to court, he loses, then he seeks to appeal to buy time, which they're now saying openly. They literally appealed merely to buy time because they knew they had no grounds legs to stand on. But buy time to do what? To kill UPC while you're busy eating? To kill UPC while you're busy sorting into your CV? That is actually, that's atrocious, and treasonable in UPC, and that is for founding parents of UPC like Milton Botte, they would feel sick. And for founding parents who are alive, some of them who are now tired old men and women who want to hand over to yourselves will feel sick. And particularly to UPC members who've suffered, and many of them who've died because of the UPC, and who've suffered, and some of them children born in exile dubiously and things like that. They feel very, very strongly about these things, let alone new members who would want to come in. So that affected us, our membership. Then finally came this Walubiri thing. One side, Jim Akena, versus the other side, Walubiri. Now the Walubiri thing came because once the Court of Appeal, Court of Appeal had not yet ruled, Olara had handed over to Joseph Bossa, his vice president. Bossa unfortunately dies, but before he dies, he had handed over interim leadership to Walubiri, who was then, I think, his vice president. I'm not really sure about that. Walubiri takes over the leadership at the time when Court of Appeal rules. So when Court of Appeal rules against Akena, Court of Appeal returns the leadership to the hands of Olara and Olara's lineage of the party. Meaning, therefore, Walubiri was legally and constitutionally the rightful person to organize the elections that the Court of Appeal had directed. That's the election in which, now that's where I come in. Now that's the election in which then I consider these other things, then I stood for leader, starting in the right elections. And that's unfortunately the election which I defeated Walubiri, and I defeated him roundly, but that was the election in which Walubiri Ugandans, the devil is a very interesting guy. The devil is a liar. The devil liar that you can play with the channel. So anyway, so they rigged these elections because the matter for court, I'll leave it like that. But they rigged it in a very crude way actually. It was but anyway, so they rigged, and I've gone for a judicial review. The matter now is waiting for a disposal. We've been before a judge, and the judge has given a date for delivery of the result, the outcome, the verdict. That it's 10 months too late. That's very late. So I hope that is a determination, a ruling that will now determine who is the president. I hope then that's the ruling that comes in my favor in terms of where the party is, unfortunately there. Sadly, while I wait and you wait and many other people wait, and I've received many very generous observations from people, including people who are waiting for me to be leader so that they join UPC. I'm asking them, please don't wait, just join UPC. Let's just have this conversation, because the future is Congress. It's not about Ochieno, but I'll be with you guys there to the end. While that happens, Jimmy and his very energetic team, I don't know what energy, sometimes people say once you sit down and have tea with Museveni, some things goes in your head. So they're energetically trying to play excess lawyers, like maybe lawyers of the African Court of Legal Rights, the East African Court of Legal Rights, over and above, because I don't know any other court which is more supreme than the Supreme Court of Uganda. And you think that 5 justices would sit and scrutinize and come to a determination without looking at the background. So that's sort of unfortunate, a bit of a denial thing. So I hope my colleagues do that, but I've promised that the event that I'm confirmed and indeed elected as leader and sworn, I will be seeking very urgently to bring the party together, all sides. I don't belong to a faction, but all factions, because there are factions, together, try and address some of the issues. Because by that, I understand the underlying issues around Jimmy, and I understand, and I actually know the underlying issues around Jimmy and the underlying issues around Olubiri. I genuinely know. Those which are political, I will seek to address. Some of them are personal. I will leave Jesus to sort them out, because, because some of them are really, you know what I'm trying to say.
Now,
you know, yeah.
I wanted to get this also from you. You say that literally Akena comes and pushes Olaro Tuno from office.
Yeah.
Literally pushes.
It was an eviction like.
It was eviction. Yes.
It was an eviction like a bailiff, but an informal bailiff. Yes.
Will he this time? Do you believe that this time he will heed to the ruling of the court? Because even after the ruling
as of
the
now,
Supreme Court,
no.
He seems defiant.
Indeed, as a
faction and all of that.
Defiance has come back. No, you're right. That's very important. I have been pleading, and I issued a statement the other day. I've been asking that I hope Jimmy has some humility and seeks, in the interest of the party of his father, the party of his mother, the party of his family, the party of Lango. Lango is right at the moment remains the big home of UPC in a major way. Some people are even using it politically, but and the party of this country. For him to concede, it's important for Jimmy to concede. I know it may be very hard for him to concede to Olubiri, but it's important for Jimmy to concede. I hope that when I am formally elected and I have a conversation with Jimmy, I hope Jimmy will give me a phone call, and definitely give me a phone call, and I hope we will seek to find a way forward, a solution on how to. If by then he will not have decided to leave Uganda House, that he seeks to leave Uganda House, and seeks to call himself anything else except a serving president of the party, so that he can join me and others in rebuilding this party, reconciling the party, forgiving each other whatever extremes we may have done and said amongst ourselves, and then becoming the good example. Jim and I, by the way, were stars. In 2005, Jim Ochieno and I were the stars of this country. Did you know that? In April 2005 and May 2005, we were the national stars. We were young, we were handsome. For him, he came with a bit of a rasta hair, quite cool, whatever. So we were cool. We were the boys. We were the most eligible bachelors in town, So politically, wherever we were the real guys. So no, we can resume that kind of conversation. After all, we came with an agenda, and the agenda was to restore Uganda People's Congress and to restore it as a part of glory. The agenda was then to go around the country and then bang the door and say the Congress is back, as everybody would say, the Congress is back. So no, we should be able to do that together, and then with all our colleagues, the Olubiris and others. But also some people who are now very tired in Uganda People's Congress, they need to recognize they're also tired. So a number of elders are tired. They give me phone calls. They say, Joseph, now we wish you well. We pray for you, and now we cannot call meetings. Now I cannot even send you airtime, but those days I could, things like, so that we're tired. We need to respect that. So when people feel exhausted, they should really, with respect, give way and allow fresh blood, fresh sets of ideas, and particularly the young blood I'm driving at. I'm pushing for the youth of this country to join this political party of theirs, because we are the party of the youth, we are the party of women, we are the part of the peasants, and we're the part of the workers, meaning workers, what we call them workers, Uganda People's Congress. That is us. I want to see young people come. Take up this political party and run with it your way, built based on the foundation that we do. Women, come take up this party and run with it. The workers, take up this party and run with it, so that, like some of the young lady I was trying to tell at the bank in terms of the rights, about something that will help you with building the industrial relation in this country, meaning trade union movement, which is genuinely for workers. Peasants, take up this political party so that we support you as the founding principles in Luwero.
That will work if the next leadership is founded, because I also think that what all people need is direction.
That's correct.
Certainly follow.
That's correct.
But this probably sounds hypothetical, but do you really see Jimmy Ochieno supporting any next leadership? And sitting back and observing the party and thinking the party interests are more important than an individual myself. But above that, how do you, I wanted you to take these two at the same time. That, and also, how do you see the next leadership of UPC reviving the party? Because it seems to have, people have deep feelings about whatever, all of these factions and all of these issues.
Yeah.
Do you see it being revived and gaining that national glory that at one point, as many Ugandans would sing, it's a mother party, it's a founding party of this country, and all of many things, very many good things that have shaped this country into what it is today were founded by this particular party. How do you think it's going to come back to that position?
I don't know which order I should answer. Let me tell you, I hope Jimmy, with humility, remembers the glory days when we came and we're going around this country, going to Makerere University, going to Chambogo University, and going to Lira. That rally in Lira in which we were with him, and then, it was too hot, and then, he needs to drink some water, and then I pick the mic, and then we roar, kind of stuff. I hope Jimmy remembers that. But also I hope Jimmy remembers the good times in State House when his father was the president. First time, he was possibly too young, and then second time. I hope Jimmy remembers the conversation and the miseries we had in Lusaka in exile, and including the other ones, of course, of theirs in Tanzania where I wasn't. I hope Jimmy remembers the statements that we issued and the many conversations that we had. I hope Jimmy remembers the miseries that our people had in concentration camps in northern Uganda. I hope Jimmy remembers how his own family, beyond even his father, suffered for this party and for this country. I hope Jimmy remembers the big things that he himself had to write, his father writes, and then he types them together as statements that we've done and worked on around the world about this country, about the atrocities by NRA, but also about the possibilities by Uganda People's Congress, but also about the hope that we want to build for the young people of this country. If Jimmy does that, and he will know that, well, to do so you needed leadership, and you need leadership, and to do so you need organization, and to do so we need to take away the negative presentation of this. I hope Jimmy remembers. This is a direct plea to him. I hope he remembers, including that book that we were discussing, that I got the president a copy on these things about image. I don't want to give the details about the book. Image and perception and whatever, and therefore public relations and how these things matter. I hope he remembers that. And if Jimmy does that, he will know that it's in our interest to look better than what we are. Yes. And to do so, we shall have to swallow our prides. And to do so, he will also remember how his father always referred to the constitution of this party. All the time, whatever he writes, all the time, Constitution of Uganda People's Congress, and all the time how he likes to talk about branches, meaning the grassroots of the membership. So if he does that, and he reviews his own conscience, and there's no reason why Jim and I and everybody else don't come back and, as I said, we hug and then bury hatchets or for whatever else may have happened in the past, including sometimes we make some horrifically terrible decisions, that we make terrible choices, we make those things in life. But we need to be recognized that, well, it was terrible, we put up our hands. And once we do that, that is leadership, and that is power, and that is organization, yes. That you're able to recognize that we made a mistake. You may recognize that possibly some of the mistakes we make are not intended. Sometimes it is with the best of intentions. There is somebody, who supported Jimmy's early conversations with Mr. Museveni. A senior person around the Jimmy circles. He was quite naive, and I told him so. Why? No, seriously. He was quite. So he thought, this individual, based on my conversation with him, he thought that whatever it was would give an outcome, at least if I have to believe him, an outcome which was positive for Uganda People's Congress. That arrangement has been disastrous for UPC. But I forgive that kind. I told him that, well, if you thought you had good intentions, it was disastrous strategy. But you acknowledge it, the person is, where do we hatch and move forward? That really is what Jimmy needs to do. And then finally, he also needs to recognize what his own legacy will be, the personal stature.
And his father's actually, so to say.
No, first of all, his own. Jimmy is a 4-time parliamentarian. So that is important. This is a privilege.
He is, but okay.
I am coming to his father, but I'm making a very important point. So Jimmy himself is a person of national import. He's been a legislator 4 times. I I tried twice, and the NRA guys made it impossible for me in Agongera. Although one of the things that Jimmy thinks and others, they think that if you're not going to parliament, you're weak politically. They don't recognize the things. They think Jimmy thinks he could go and start as UPC in Kiruhura, and then win landslide. No, it's not easy. So it's about some of these things about geographical locations, and in his case, of course, is the privilege of being Obote's son. But so all these are factors that we need, and this is a conversation that we need to have. And by this, one of the things that I need to plead with Jimmy and some of his friends, who taunt UPC members that if you stand for parliament in Busembatia South, or you stand for parliament in Kayunga, and you don't get through, then you're less UPC than the person who won maybe LC3 chairpersons in Tororo, or because you did not go to parliament because you lost in Nebi, or perhaps even in Bushenyi, you can't compete with somebody who successfully won an election in Oyam. I think that is simplistic. Or no, are you either less UPC or incapable of having the broader vision? I think that is simplistic. I think it's a game, it's a conversation, it's a language which is also being used. It's almost kind of emotional blackmail. But I think it's one which is also unfortunate. So I hope that changes. But I'm confident that particularly in the event that I'm elected leader, that Jimmy will give it a second thought. But finally, as you rightly say, Jimmy must be considering the legacy of his father. The father that opted that will be his permanent spokesperson in this end of the world. So, he should consider that. And then if he does that, I'm sure he'll review his conscience, and then we move these things on. Your other question was?
My other question was, in light of all of this, and people having had those deep feelings about the divide now in the UPC, aside from the factions, but even about Ochieno himself, and even the current leadership, because at the end of the day, some people just have feelings that are not just about Ochieno. It's just about all the leaders of the UPC. How could you not be able to organize this house? Why is it like that? So what my question was, how do you see yourself reviving the glory of the UPC, putting it back to that Ugandans will sit home and think, yeah, UPC can actually take us back to where we were and probably move forward this country. That if it presents a presidential material, people will feel confident to support them, to back them, to give them the support they need to be able to lead this country.
Can you just imagine that Ochieno is on the presidential ballot, and there is someone who has the energy to say Ochieno is on presidential material? Just think about it. But no, one, I don't belong to those factions, because that is early. Those you're running to refer to. I need to start with that question. So no, I don't belong to any of the factions. I say that I'm too big for factions. Uganda People's Congress, number one, and then number two, that should give hope to the citizens of this country. Both in and outside UPC, that UPC is not only about factionalism. There are people like Ochieno who are about the vision of the party and the ideas of the party and the vision of the Republic of Uganda and the future of the youth of this country. And so they should be able to look up to us. But I also say again and again that UPC is the political party of the future, and UPC is the future. And the absolute confidence that I have is so total that I'm so committed to this that I can't wait for that time when we're able to resolve the leadership question. And that's why I'm extremely confident that whatever happens, all we need is to bury our hatchets, reorganize, and then provide a leadership that we're able to sell around the country. Why? Because the idea, meaning the glittering gold, when we focus on health, we focus on education, we focus on infrastructure, we focus on agriculture, we focus on employment, we focus on technology, we focus on the environment, we focus on the vision of regional integration that the Museum want to sing, but I don't know whether they can spell it. The focus on Pan-Africanism and global polity. No, at each and every of those ones, we beat all other political parties with evidence. You want to repeat that? Including on Mabira as an environmental issue. We beat them, and with evidence. All the youth of this country, who thankfully are the majority, want is a future.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want a future which is guaranteed in terms of environment. They want a future which is guaranteed in terms of security. They want a future which is guaranteed of fairness and justice. They want a future which is guaranteed for their jobs. They want a future which is guaranteed for their health. They want a future which is guaranteed in terms of education and education excellence. And they want a future in which they're able to feed themselves. They want a future in which they are the #1 destination in East Africa. They want a future where their schools are the #1 choices for destination in East Africa. They want a future where they go to Addis Ababa and they roar as Ugandans and they're listened to. They want a future where they go around the world. They say, a country, Uganda, formerly of Idi Amin, some guy, some tyrant possibly was there for 40 years, but no. The Republic of Uganda is a source of the Nile. The Republic of Uganda, full of buffaloes. The Republic of Uganda, oh, those national parks are excellent. The Republic of Uganda, oh, that kind people. Don't you see the loving, beautiful girls smiling because they've turned up in Geneva for an international conference. And look how smart they are up to, and including their brains. That is what the youth of this country. And yes, they want to be able to go to universities because it's affordable. And in the UPC's case, we gave them free. We gave Museveni free. Museveni needs to pay back. You know, they want a guarantee that when they fall pregnant, they will be catered for in hospitals. The mess I found at Mulago the other day is shockingly atrocious. It's actually criminal. They want a guarantee that when they get involved in the productivity in terms of agriculture and the cash crops, that their prices are going to be competitive. That is all Ugandans want. Those are the guarantees from Uganda People's Congress one, because we provided for it. What was it? You know, it was about when you said ignorance, poverty, disease, So in other words, we beat each and every facet of society needs, then including possibility then for full employment. Why? Because every child, everybody who completed university or post-secondary education had a job and had the capacity and opportunity to get a job. I know the NRSA's population has multiplied 4 to perhaps 4 times over the time period. But the economy's population grew per annum on average 1.345, maybe upper limit 6. Economies grow, they claim at 5%. In other words, if our population has grown even by 5 times, you know, our economies have grown after Museveni bosses by 10 times, meaning we should be able to cater for that. No, Ugandans have been taken for a ride. The future of this country is Uganda People's Congress. I'm absolutely confident. Just make a quick point. I go around the country, and every time I have spoken, I have people who wowed and they've come around. Meaning I just lack capacity to do a lot more. The other day I was in my Tororo, and I was in a radio station. I don't know whether I mentioned it. I was in a radio station in Tororo on Saturday for 2 hours. Of the 7 callers, I think 3 were joining Uganda People's Congress. Of all the callers, all of them were giving us take. After the call, I got 2 WhatsApp messages. These are not scientific, but it tells you what these things are. People wanting to join Uganda People's Congress, including young person who wants to stand for LC3 chairpersons, working civil organizations. And finally, I got one young lady, beautiful, and we had a few chats on WhatsApp, but not much. She said, oh, I've just listened to you know this FM. You know what? You've just convinced me to join the party of my roots. That's Uganda People's Congress. Just imagine if we had sorted out this mess.
At that point, in fact, should you sort out this mess, as the court has pronounced itself in the matter? And let's say you've had a reasonable leadership, a legal leadership this time. Do you see yourselves being able to rally, to get back on your feet, that by the next presidential elections, 2026, you are in position to present a presidential candidate, be able to revive structures at the local levels, because at the end of the day, that is what builds into the national support. Do you see yourself as a whole, as a party, being able to deliver that in 2026? That's literally two years, because this year is done.
The answer is yes, but you're absolutely also right that the sooner we do that, and the sooner we did that, the better. Definitely, presidential candidate does not require much in terms of national structures. We've got capacity. UPC is the most organized political party, by the way, when we are fine. We are not wrangled. And so we are the party of organization. You know, once the political parties, once we defeated the NRA on that battle of political parties, and we were registering political parties, so it required going to districts and getting signatures. I think it's even actually in the Monitoring New Vision, I think somewhere in Iganga, we registered, I think, 20,000 signatures in a day. Granted, not all of them we could say that now today UPCs, but that's how much the hope. And particularly remember, Bill Robert was alive and in exile. This is a new thing. So that is it. So no, mobilizing and getting signatures for us is not the problem. In others, reclaiming also our membership is not a problem. I'm very confident in terms of what I'm trying to tell you that I get very good feedback from young people who want to join the party. And that's why I get very frustrated by the guys who are bogging down a UPC business. So it shouldn't be the problem. However, in terms of our competitiveness, that's a fair thing. And we don't, for me, I don't fudge because we don't fudge. As far as saying that maybe we would get the 2/3 majority in the next parliament, that is unlikely. You know what I'm saying? The fact that possibly that we may get 50% of the parliament, and that's possibly unlikely. And the fact that we can become the majority party in parliament, that is a stretch. But I have an aspiration of making us become the largest political party in parliament very, very soon. Whether that happens in the next elections is possibly harder under the current circumstances. Yes. But you know, should something happen in NRA, and you know, things can happen. You know, it is going to be such a huge turnaround. The political party of the majority political party in the National Assembly, I can tell you, will be Uganda People's Congress. Readiness for participation, after all, you're not asking me for figures. So I was just being there a bit extravagant. No, in 2 years, and we just have about 2 years, in 2 years, we should be in the very minimum able to treble the number of parliamentary seats we have at the moment. If I were president of the Uganda People's Congress this week, which is possible, if I claim the UPC office in the Uganda House and begin to reorganize the party secretariat, including putting the desks that I want to very quickly, youth, women, communications and organizations, you know, grass structures and things like that, very quickly within the next 1 month. If I did that and I set rail onto my agenda, what I think and what I know about Uganda People's Congress, the very minimum, I would expect that we would more than treble our parliament seats. I would not hesitate to say that we, and particularly when if all of us rally together, no, we would get no less than quadruple our parliamentary seats. What is those? The very bare minimum 40. I'm not being ambitious. I'm being extremely realistic.
All right.
When I give the ambitious number, it will be higher. And people will begin to think that I'm dreaming, but dreams can be true.
Okay, all right. We're going to go into a very short break. I have just one question which we're going to begin with in the next hour. And then we can transition into the next issue that we have to deal on the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. My name again is Roger Studiabwe. We are going to go in for a very short commercial break, and then we will be right back to give you a little more information. He has a lot of wisdom that he likes to share, and we are privileged to be here to receive. So thank you so much for being a part of us. Don't change. Just wait for us.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
What at the church, though?
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Do you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
Looking for a pair of shoes? Less Up Stores has a wide range of selection for unisex footwear. We have the best quality of all brands at pocket-friendly prices and with neck deliveries countrywide. Just place your order or reach us on 0772 08 0090. You can also check up at Less Up Stores on all our social media platforms. Less Up, craft your own footprints. Are you craving for that special meal that will entice your taste buds and leave you with lasting thrilling memories? Look no further. Spice Island Bulenga has got your answer. Natural, fresh and delicious juice, the best meals. Don't miss our daily specials from Monday to Sunday. Pizza Wednesday, Saturday Pizza Bonanza, you buy one and take two. Come dine with us and feel the experience. We are located at Prime Shopping Center in Bulenga, Mitiana Road. For inquiries, call us on 0704 11 1720. Spice Island, we treat your cravings.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much still for being a part of us. My name again is Roger Sturiapo, and with me is Mr. Joseph Ochieno. Mr. Ochieno Joseph, I think that's the right English. Yes, and we were talking in the first hour, we were talking about the UPC and the current ruling that was given by the Supreme Court, nullifying the presidency of Mr. Jimmy Akena. Honorable Jimmy Akena is an MP. And of course now I understand that you're going to do fresh elections.
No.
Organize the fresh elections.
No.
How is that going to be?
No. Fresh elections took place as instructed by the Court of Appeal, and that took place in December 2020. Those are the elections that I won and that Walubiri played around with. And that is the election for the outcome of which is being awaited by a judicial review. And the leader out of that emerges as the new party leader. I know it's a bit confusing, yes.
Yeah. No, okay, it's just to understand a little bit of more context.
Yes.
So you had an election in 2020.
Yes,
one
December.
that was literally illegally also organized because
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't illegal. There are two elections in 2020. Jimmy's election of August 2020 was illegally organized. In fact, it was in contempt of court, except that the contempt of court thing application, meaning the legal contempt of court thing, was not pursued properly, and then court dismissed it on the technicality grounds. But court had said on Wednesday, 29th July, that Jimmy's delegates conference due on the Saturday, the 1st of August, should not take place. Jimmy was in court. His lawyer was in court. But now I see his friends parading the streets of television networks, claiming that they were not aware because they got the final notice on Monday, the following week after the ruling. They're being disingenuous with themselves. They knew that court had stopped their delegates conference from taking place, but they also went ahead and hired security services, some of whom is alleged are from the state. So that's why Jimmy talks about his second term, which ends in 2025. 4 weeks later, after that interim order of 29th of August, of July, court ruled on September 7th definitively that Jimmy had not been elected in conformity with the party constitution, and the party should hold fresh elections. The party, meaning the party as last led by Olara. That election took place in December 2020. That's the election.
After the nullification of the president leadership of Ochieno.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yes. But it was in the same vein, saying Ochieno is not elected, the party should go ahead and hold fresh elections.
So the fresh elections are also still contested?
Contested in terms of the outcome, yes.
Yes. So then how do you reach a conclusion that whoever won the contested elections now becomes president? Because both sides... No.
It is contested in as far as the outcome is concerned, not the legality.
Yes. And that's the thing. Okay, the outcome, let's say.
That's merely the outcome, yes.
As it has been said,
yes.
you won the elections.
Yes.
But there are questions in the process with the Warubiri, as you have said before. Yeah. So even then, do you think it would be reasonable to rely on those contested elections to say
we took into account all those ones. In my argument, I say that, well, notwithstanding some of the challenges and the irregularities that took place, on the basis of the genuine legitimate process outcomes that took place. But it's a matter for the court, If the court still has a possibility, minor possibility of saying that, okay, fresh elections be held. I think it would be very unfair for party members, because party members will be having the third election without an outcome. It's a very expensive process for the party, very expensive process for the members, and very expensive process for party for the party candidates. It would be very, very unfair. And then here is very expensive again for the party in terms of time, meaning that you last had a leader really in 2020, in 2010. Surely the judge should be reasonable and fair and simply say that there's an outcome here. There's a winner, and there is a deliberate winner, although fudged by Walubiri and his team. The winner is here, and that's all. That should happen. And that is the fairest actual outcome that I would expect. They can go ahead on a 1% chance and say, Walubiri won. I would appeal, but Walubiri would continue and would see what he's trying to do with it. Because Walubiri also, another thing that is very important about Walubiri, when I was trying to talk about the dynamics of the image of the party, since Walubiri swore himself as president in December 28th, 2020, have you seen Walubiri anywhere?
I have not.
Have you seen Walubiri, have you had Walubiri visiting a district?
I haven't.
Has you had Walubiri visiting a youth group? Have you had Walubiri at a funeral of a party member? Have you had Walubiri at nothing? So Walubiri, that's why I'm trying to talk about guys pushing the party leadership for pocket change. That's why I say I can't wait, because I know that my leadership of this party is for party members, for members, for citizens of this country, and for the future. Some others, what I'm seeing, I am not quite sure. So no, just to confirm, it's contested merely in terms of outcomes, rather than anything else. But Jim Ochieno's people call it Walubiri's election. and so that's why I told at the beginning of the conversation that actually there's some issues to be resolved in the UPC, meaning personality issues. Yes.
Do you have faith in that direction? Do you think that is a likely way they will take?
Which one?
The one where they declare who won the 2020 election. Do you think that is very likely to happen?
From the courts?
From the courts, from the party itself?
No, you ask. From the courts, I I'm reasonably confident because with my council we are reasonably confident. We have the evidence, we have affidavits from members who did not vote, but allegedly they voted. The whole thing was allegedly very narrow. This guy's fudged figures from my 300 plus versus Walubiri's 150 plus to Walubiri's 278. So once they hit a miss, they said, okay, so Walubiri defeated Ochieno with 7 votes, so we can stop there. so on technicality basis, just nullifying the results of one district is enough to overturn the results. Walubiri, in his attempts to do the figures, annulled one of the districts of where it got 7-0. And in that district, there was somebody who was loyal to him. And so they did the other things, so the person told Walubiri's Electoral Commission that I didn't participate in these things, and so they cancelled those results. So on the basis of what I have, I've got witness statements, where the district chairpersons who did not participate in elections, but elections are alleged to have participated in those elections, they cannot be. I've got districts where I won, and by the time results came, it had been done. So no, there's reasonable evidence, and so it should not be a complicated thing. Now, beyond that, as I said, the judge can rule on either in my favor or against me for Walubiri, or ask for fresh elections. The fairest is, on the basis of the evidence, is to rule in my favor. And as I said, I repeat, it would be very unfortunate if they sought fresh elections for the reason that I gave. It will basically be extending the pain of the party, and I hope whoever the judge at the time, and I hope the judge takes due consideration to that.
Okay, let's wait and see. Of course, we will still be here to sort of talk about all of these issues as they evolve. We will understand, because I think it's important that we understand the processes, and we'll be here to obviously ask you and any other person who would be kind as to give us a say about all of this process, and so we'll be able to reach it, to reach to the bottom of this. But also to move on, another issue on the agenda, one I thought that would, of course, given your expertise and your, one I know that you've largely traveled, but also participated in a lot of international spaces, is the group of the 77. The G77, as it is shortened, was established in the 1964, I think, about 59 years ago this year. And next year, its 60th birthday will be here in Uganda.
I'm aligned with G77.
The G77.
Yeah.
And for all of this, one may be for someone who's out there, if you could just give us a bit of context on what you think the G77 is, and what is it, how is it benefiting all of these countries, including Uganda in particular?
I think the G77 is some kind of mini beggar group of nations. It's a sulking group of nations considered poor.
Yeah,
and
developing.
And nations that have failed to meet a particular criteria. And they group of themselves, and then they think, quite rightly, that they're being treated unfairly. And so group up yourselves and try and speak as one. That said, I don't know the last time in the 33 years of my active political and global polity have I heard of a major event by a G77, a major political decision, because a political decision by the G77, a major economic decision by the G77 that has resulted in an impact that has shaken the G7, the 7 most industrialized, or in more recent times that moved to the G7, 8, 9, 10, and now G22. G22 makes it slightly broader, it's a much more fair, open system. So that is being hosted in Uganda. It's good news for people with hotels. It's good news for people who can have deals. Good news for people who will possibly sell in shops because we're getting extra guests. Good news because some dollars will come in terms of extras. Good news for people who know how to do contracts like CHOGM, those dubious contracts. Beyond that, I actually generally don't know how much the conference here. Yeah, and then of course gives us good press as a country. And a few of those guys will return here as tourists. Those are positive things.
Those are some of the contributions.
And as they'll spend here. A few of them may become our in-laws, you know. You know, those also happen. Depends on how you look at it. And but they'll spend here. The problem is that while they come, we will have to pretend to paint Entebbe neat. You know, we shall do some, you know, pit latrines that have never seen brushes since they're built. You know, they will see, you know, yellow paints. They tend to make them yellow irritatingly, you know. So they'll do those. So they do some facelifts, and but some of those facelifts will come from our money.
From the G77. Of course, it's not 77 now. It's about 134. I think. The beginning was just 77. That's why the name was.
This tea is fantastic, by the way. This tea by Digitalk television is fantastic tea.
So this having been made as an ad hoc to be able to inform the positions of the developing countries in the UN and the UN policy discussions and multilateral policies and all of this. Do you think, in your time as you have interfaced with all of these geopolitics and political issues, do you think it has been able to contribute anything to the developing countries in particular?
And that's what I said. I don't know anything major. However, there is nothing as important and as powerful as unity. So really, of course, I'm sure the heads of these organizations, when they meet, sometimes some of the side meetings that they normally call fringe meetings at these global events, as chairperson of these organizations, they will speak as voices. Also, once in a while, particularly countries like the US, who like to go ahead and bully the rest of the world, and then come back and blackmail and, you know, and bribe. Maybe once in a while they come and meet the G7 people and say, look, you know, if you support us in Ukraine, you know, you know, we shall fine you less when it comes to our second-hand clothes coming to Uganda, things like that. So they do that, but generally not. Truth is, I genuinely don't think that G77 as a group is anything to write home about, unless the G77 becomes part of a campaign that talk about unfair trade, that G77 talk about.
Those are some of the issues they believe.
Yes, they talk about. But if they're not supposed to be the mainstream thing, unfair trade, if they talk about access to markets in the you know, and which is basically related to many of these more developed economies, if they're able to make and negotiate for fair and open access to inward investments, the G77 on terms which are basically uniform, rather than some of these bilateral things, so that they hope that Mr. Museveni doesn't betray them because he likes betraying partners. You know, yeah, including those countries in Africa, because I know some of the things truly, but I'm not going there because some of the things that will happen. So you talk as a group, and then you say that, well, okay, COVID vaccines, you know, use that as an example, you know, to G77, at what rate are you going to give us? And at what pace are you going to give us? Or is it necessarily going to be that we're also going to get quality? Well, for some of those COVID things, I'm told that there's even a time when certain countries got special kinds of masks, and some other countries like US get those masks which are for dust, you know, kind of stuff. So I genuinely don't want to write home about this as a topic. For Uganda, it's good PR for Mr. Museveni and his family and his friends. For Uganda, it's good for those people who are going to benefit, but unfortunately they'll be the closer. For the most average Ugandan in Tororo, I don't know. For the most average Ugandan in Budumba, I don't know. For the most average Ugandan in Sironko, I don't know. For the most average Ugandan in Atiak, I don't know. And a par land where there is huge dispute that has been badly handled by Mr. Museveni, I don't know any difference that's going to happen. In fact, they'll make sure that editors will be shy to put headlines about a par, even if it's hitting the peak of many of these things.
And what do you think about the non-aligned movement?
The non-aligned movement was slightly much more exciting at the foundation. The non-aligned movement was originally designed to in response really to the manner in which the post-World War world presented itself with a very apparent emergence, meaning leading to the Cold War of East and West Western world, and that a time came when I missed those times. Those were the times when Museveni was a poodle, like he's a poodle to Washington. All you need to do is just go to Moscow and say I'm opposed to that guy. and you'll get some machines. You'll get some machines. And go to the other side and you'll be given free first class, air ticket.
Yeah,
so they did that. So no, the non-aligned movement was driven and inspired by countries that were fairly genuinely saying that, look, we don't want to be tied to the ideological dogma of the West or that of the East. We want to be able to freely trade and live with and interact with both the East and the West, and that we will not be bogged down, on these terms. And so when it comes to ideological polity in our national politics, we are not going to associate. In those cases, actually, non-aligned movement was not even, unlike the G7, which was basically poverty characteristics. There are some countries that were like Congo, Zaire, Mobutu's, who were very clearly the case that they found new friends in Washington, and they were the Nyampalas for Anglo-America in Washington. So they associated. And then there's some countries that radically went and associated themselves with the East, like in this case particularly, possibly the Mozambiques of this world would have done so at the time. And so were examples, possibly the Tanzanians of this world. But of course, Tanzania and Uganda at the time, most of the progressive African leaders actually sought the view that they were going to be non-aligned, partly because the majority of the progressive African leaders post-independence were also countries that had emerged out of Western colonies. And so to suggest the other way was to radically divorce their political parents and masters, and they did not do so. If they maintained that as a power, and non-aligned movement today again is something that I don't again have much respect for, because when things started changing, leaders started coming, and I don't know if, for example, you can call Mr. Museveni non-aligned. Mr. Museveni, is one of those people who's one leg in the morning thing and one leg in the other. Mr. Museveni, when he was coming to power, was saying he was a Marxist, and came in and then sold everything UPC built, and then came in and then became the Nyampala of Anglo-America. So after selling every bit into Anglo-America, is Museveni really non-aligned? When is actually the head prefect of the Anglo-American interests on the African continent? He's not. But Uganda is officially a member of the non-aligned movement, meaning that you are saying that, look, for us, we don't belong to the other. It suits Museveni now, especially now that, when it's convenient, he's able to say that, he's in alliance with or supports the Russian war in Ukraine. And when it's convenient, he says that, well, we shall send our little boys and girls to go and suffer for you in Somalia, meaning London and Washington. So playing both sides, that was not the idea. The idea was basically that you're not going to tie us into this thing. The idea was that to say that the non-aligned movement would be a movement therefore that would seek to to break the Cold War. The non-aligned movement would possibly be the biggest voice in seeking to resolve the Russian-Ukrainian war. The non-aligned movement would possibly be a very big voice in the current Arab-Israeli conflict by saying that, look, America and the others, you guys, the global north, specific major countries, you're too much fathers to a spoiled Israeli child. And then on the other, that, where is the Arab reality in many of these other things? Why can't you allow and accept the reality that is important, that Israel and Palestine live side by side, with each other as secure, independent nation states, and that you respect international law. I don't see that voice in the non-aligned movement. Why? Because all these things have sort of like faded, and then now become clubs, just like the African Union. Clubs, just like actually the UN General Assembly. There have been clubs for people taking girlfriends, and clubs for picking up allowances, and clubs for taking 71 Ugandans to go and advise your prime minister who fears people with PhDs.
How do you then do you think that now, for example, the non-aligned movement, of course it's a consolidation of a group of developing countries who do not have as much voice individually. Do you think that even the interests of non-aligned movement as a collective can still be stalled, and the purpose and direction stalled by these other power blocks like the EU and all of these things?
Stalled or restored?
Stalled, as in to have direction, and these ones will sort of, because of the interests these power blocks have in particular individual countries, that sort of hinders how these developing countries participate in the non-aligned movement and to even take a position collectively.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm not sure whether it's as a result of the strength of the global powers or the weakness of the non-aligned states. I would actually argue both, that the non-aligned states, as they were, have predominantly manufactured and created poodles as leaders, the example of which is Uganda, that actually when they go to the tables, they go like, whatever called children, and in Museveni's case, he goes like, deal makers like brokers, what have you got for me, deliver kind of stuff. I think it's more about that. Our independence leaders were robust leaders. Milton Obote was robust, Kwame Nkrumah was robust, Julius Nyerere was robust. These guys would go and go onto the tables and meet the biggest global leaders and tell them very nicely in their faces, and actually they would leave them impressed by their candor, organization, clarity, purpose, focus, and vision. That although they were minor from the nation state that they represented, that these are guys with the focus. And that is why if you see Milton Obote's photograph with JF Kennedy, it is total respect, coming down the powers. Now, those leaders, if they were lucky, unfortunately they've been terribly unlucky, that they had children who thought and acted like them, and they had political leaders that they nurtured who followed them, and so therefore that we did not have dictators who would come and break our democratic systems, and so their political parties had leaders who looked like them. Today, those would be the leaders of the second generation, in fact, possibly third generation of independence leaders who would then be able to have the capacity to push these organizations like that. I fundamentally believe that if the non-aligned movement in totality spoke with one voice, had a sense of conscious purpose, had a clarity in terms of their directions, were convinced against the politics of materialism or being bought. They were saying no to their wives and children going to give birth in dubious places in Germany because they're sorting out themselves here. And they're saying that we are with you because we are with you both sides because this is what we want to achieve for our people. They would gain global respect, and the non-aligned movement would be a voice, and it would be a voice to make these global powers panic. In fact, it would mean therefore that when there is a matter coming to the UN Security Council, that the leaders of the Security Council would ask the first most important question, not how would our other Pudo, the one we bought for just, you know, we just bought him a Mercedes-Benz and one for his dubious girlfriend underground, you know, a Chrysler car. You know, what would they think? But rather, what would the other bloc think? So Russia would think like that. Possibly China would think like that. The US would possibly think like that. At this material time, I can tell you that absolutely does not apply.
So in essence, are you trying to say that with whether there's the non-aligned movement or this bloc as a whole, or there isn't, it doesn't make any difference?
I can tell you very honestly, and I feel very surprised today that I'm telling you this because it's true, that I actually don't genuinely know that these organizations at the moment serve a purpose. To the extent that I actually am not sure what critical purpose the African Union is serving. And I speak as the leader of Uganda People's Congress, and I speak as somebody whom I hope I will be on these tables with these guys. And so therefore it's a deliberate presentation I'm making to you, that in the event, in the course of my lifetime, that I'm able to sit on these guys, with these guys, whether at the G77, the non-aligned movement, the African Union. Indeed, when I'm having a conversation with the guys in Arusha of the East African Committee, I will be having this conversation because there's a blunt conversation that leaders need to have if we're to wake up and redirect ourselves. Because yes, we've lost directions and our leaders lost us in those directions. And my challenge is, I really do not see visionary thoughts. I don't really see new ideas in terms of rigor. I actually don't see the non-aligned movement, therefore, pushing some grand, great new idea on the basis of the new world today, 2023, this is the time of the founding of this organization. Because again, like I said with the G77, but as I said, the non-aligned movement is possibly the more exciting organization for their purpose in terms of clarity, that they're able to come ahead and say, well, we challenge the global powers on the basis of this, and we seek this alternative. Because part of it, for us, we are neutral, you know, don't. No, we are providing a big alternative.
One thing I've heard actually, the previous, I think, chairmanship of the non-aligned movement was, is it Azerbaijan or something like that? And their focus was largely on the SDGs and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Apparently, a country that chairs that, that for that period, I think it determines what is going to be the theme and focus of their chairmanship. And I have not seen one for Uganda particularly for what is beginning next year. So I do not know if you're going to define that, or I'm just
you are the journalist
who is ignorant about that one. But but collectively in these power blocks, just to make it a bit broader, the G20, the United Nations itself, the World Trade Organization, this one, and the G77 and the likes. Do you think collectively they do serve any particular purpose or contributes that, for that matter, to development of those particular member states?
The World Trade Organization, of all those organizations, I know that even against the background of bullying from the US usually, they've done on the 6 to 10 to do as much work around global trade as possible. So no, the World Trade Organization is not one of those ones I would dismiss. However, the World Trade Organization bosses continue to be appointees of mainly these big global powers. And in many cases, the director generals of these agencies, it's not uncommon for them to be mired in compromises. But remember that these are agencies whose resolutions must be ratified by the big powers. And in world trade, many times the US has has frustrated them. Occasionally China, in terms of our access to trade, and you see therefore that these organizations, these countries, are basically pushing agenda for their economy rather than the world. Now,
everyone is pulling to their end.
Precisely, and yet you would think that, to be fair, you would expect that most of the member organizations would be seeking broad member organizations. No, as I said, in this case, developing countries sort of relatively benefit because of the technicalities involved, and but still the politics play. UN General Assembly, I'm actually quite critical. Are they annual things?
The General Assembly, I think yes.
Yes. I believe that the UN General Assembly should be by annual. There's a huge amount of money wasted.
By annual in a sense of 2 years.
Yes, every 2 years. I want it to be by annual because the amount of money that poor nations spend going there just to beg and sometimes just to take pictures with people who are leaders of these other countries. Luckily enough, most of those leaders, when people call, Joe Biden is Joseph, he's my namesake.
Yeah.
But he's elected, so people call him Sleepy Joe, but he's elected. Mr. Museveni is not elected, So no, but the people want to just go and take pictures of Sleepy Joe, and then there'll be new vision. Museveni sits with, he had a private phone call with the U.S. president. That's breaking news. No, I think that the UN General Assembly is another talking show. Things tend to happen, though, in the body which has got 15 members. These days has expanded. Security Council. The permanent 5 is a ping-pong thing, because no one's about big issues, and there are real agreements there. I think they are no longer deterrent agencies because they're now too divided partisan. That is why it's urgent that Africa should get her slot there. It's urgent that the Security Council is reformed. It's urgent that it's expanded. And it's urgent that Africa gets at least, in the very bare minimum, a permanent seat. If then we're going to go to global equity, there's no reason why Africa doesn't get 2 seats in that expanded Security Council. After all, we are saying that we are being democratic, so we're not doing it on the basis of who's able to go ahead and bomb Iraq and get away with it, but rather on the population per capita, to be fair. And then who's the richest? Then of course Africa is the richest continent, although it's the most misused. You African rulers, particularly the rulers, you guys should be ashamed, man.
The poorest, richest continent.
Yes. So the organization like the European Union, those organizations work. The European Union works. There are many critics, and there's some areas which is neither here nor there, but they work. I lived in UK, and I knew how people would fidget in British Parliament discussing what has come from Brussels as a direct from the European Union. And I know, including today, the other day I was talking to a friend of mine who's talking about a course for telephone charging systems, where I think the European Union actually has pushed for standardization of telephone charger codes, meaning that they're able to go ahead and push to say that it's unfair because they know some big corporations, some big business are ripping off the citizens. Oh, my brother. That is work. What was the last time the East African community took a position on anything that you know of? Tell me.
Even right now, the EU gave a directive for, it's called due diligence directive about coffee.
Yes.
And coffee production. And
yes.
now every country and your body, your coffee management body and their players and all of that have to make sure that the coffee you produce is to the standard that fits the European market. Other than that, you cannot export your coffee to the European countries. Now, I've rarely seen even the African Union have any position on any issue in Africa, let alone East Africa as a community. So I do not know. Again, I have my questions as to whether these blocks do really work, or if we need to reform and say that I think we lost track here, and this is where we need to go back to and start to reform and do differently what we should have done in the first place. But even that given, do you think the direction that we have with these blocks that are existing right now, they can still go ahead and inform the geopolitics?
I am still explaining to you. I will give you another example from European Union, and I'm doing so deliberately. You know, the working times directives. The European Union came with working times directive and made provisions that workers, then these guys like to exploit, you cannot work beyond certain hours. And a country that does not sign up to that breaches. And an employer that does not, or that breaches that, is liable to penalties or prosecution. Those are agencies and systems that work for those countries. Where have you had this on the African continent? Uganda. So those are small things. Now I look around Kampala and there's just some of the small things like trading standards. You go down Chireka and then you buy a charger, and the guy says, "Oh yeah, it's working. Let me test it for you." By the time tomorrow morning is dead, and you can't get a receipt for it. You can't get a refund for it.
There's no guarantee.
So there are no guarantee things. There are no warranty things. As I told you guys, the last year I fell sick because it affected my health. I was so desperate for a car. I was driving a car. I had issues. The car is expensive. I buy an engine. The engine is a false engine. I cannot merely even go back to the garage and you talk to these people and then they're talking to you in tongues. It would not happen in many of these places. One, you would, you'd face the police. Number two, the consequences. Number three, public relations. People don't come to you. So our citizens who are listening and watching should know that they're being taken for a ride. So these conversations are conversations for our people to wake up, to realize that the people need to begin to hold their political leaders to account, whether legislators or leaders of political parties in this are people who are elected in different kind of situations, and that the youth of this country begin to engage in the political process, join political parties. That's why they need to join the UPC that has got these other ideas, so that when we're able to translate these things into matters of governance, then we're able to strengthen institutions, because that's all you're trying to talk about, isn't it? Strengthen institutions and systems that work for us. That meaning, hopefully, that by the end of the day, in the absence of a non-aligned movement for a song and D77 for song, East African Community for a song, at least there is one which works within Kampala, where you can hold your government to account. And then you also know that you've got a President Ochieno who, if he does not address, holding leaders to account, if he does not address the issue of American companies exploiting Ugandan exporters, you will take action. And you can take action by saying that, well, from today on, and this is how it works. We know we are exporting, maybe our Ugandan coffee people export to America maybe worth $10 million US, maybe even $5 million US per annum. But that is such a huge impact to the poorest of our community, or to a certain section of our population. And then you say, America, we know the things that we export to Uganda are worth $1 billion US. Do you know what? If you don't, sort out this 5 million thing of our people, we are also going to cut off America, And so instead of importing your Chrysler cars, left-hand drive, or your computers or laptops or whatever, no, we are either going to China, or we understand that these things can also be made in Ireland.
Okay. I have some of the questions that I
Yeah.
thought that would go through as time is running out.
Mhm.
There's Ethan Mwine who has a question. How do you think Uganda will navigate its role in these conferences to promote peace and security in regions with ongoing conflict, considering its commitment to non-alignment?
Repeat the question.
How do you think Uganda will navigate its role in these conferences to promote peace and security in regions with ongoing conflicts, considering its commitment to non-alignment?
I had that question. I didn't want to say. So can you imagine? Uganda will not, because Uganda has never, and Museveni is not interested in it. As I say, the non-aligned movement that we joined as our founding, as UPC at independence, the non-aligned is not the non-aligned movement of today. No other leaders of Museveni compare them with the waters of this world. The leadership we have today is opportunistic. The leadership we have in charge of this country are opportunistic people. They are neither non-aligned nor anything else that you can define on them. But as I said, the only thing that Uganda can benefit, and I have to emphasize, is the fact that yes, the fact that this thing is happening in Uganda is good for the reasons that I gave. However, I just hope that it's not an opportunity for people to turn their girlfriends and their extended nieces to become the tea makers, and then to locate only hotels that belong to their relatives and friends and NRS sycophants as the hotels of choice for the guests who are coming. I hope they can also consider, by the Uganda House. Do you know that Uganda House we've got flats, residential flats? Yes, we've got Uganda House flats. The posh, 3-bedroom, massively improved in the setup city. So I want to get a phone call from them from tomorrow. People, booking some of the houses. I think the occupation rate is neither here. So there are a few properties which are empty there. I want to hear them say that they're going to book those for some of their guests. Just like Uganda House, our tower, also has got some office spaces which are not occupied. I hope they can say that, well, maybe they book 1 or 2 floors, or maybe 10 offices, I don't know whether they're 20, 30, which are unoccupied, simply because of the location of Uganda House, rather than because it's associated with military Obote, although they want to dance with Obote's son in a crooked way.
As emerging powers like India and China play a more significant role within NAM and G77, could this lead to a concentration of power and influence in these countries?
That's an interesting point. They will naturally do anyway. Some of these influences are imperatives. We can't pretend about them. But it's really, that's why there's the principle of, the principle of democracy and the consensus should really apply in these organizations. And particularly if these are organizations that say we don't want power and bullying of the global West, the West versus the East. Then we are the group of the free who are not aligned to a bloc. They should be able to see that, look, give us a break, as I would say, give us a break. We created this group because we don't want a headache from people who see themselves as global ideological masters. Here we are, neither here nor there. Let's have a conversation on the basis of consensus and the basis of a need and respect for one another.
And this last one, this one asks, in a world with growing nationalist tendencies, how can the NAM and G77 reiterate their commitments to multilateralism and peaceful coexistence?
That's interesting. That's a very important question, actually, because the world is getting excessively nationalist.
Yeah.
And for the purpose of the viewers, the nationalism referred there, I hope, usually very negative nationalism. Nationalism of identities, which is almost to the extreme of almost racialist, we versus really the others. And the nationalist is almost like Trump, except Trump cannot define himself as a genuine American. I know here I'm telling some people are not happy because there's some people who think Trump is a saint. No, that's very important. The nationalist movements around the non-aligned nation states, some of them would possibly be in emerging former Soviet republics. beyond that, actually, African nations, in many cases, we are so docile that I don't know any nation that will be moving towards that. You know, the nearest country I would think of is actually Rwanda, if you get the tone of Mr. Kagame and some of the things that he's trying to do. But then you go ahead and realize that Kagame's nationalism is possibly not negative nationalism. It is almost nationalism towards patriotism.
And sovereignty.
Yes, and sovereignty in a way. And here I'm being very deliberate, because you can disagree with Kagame in many ways, but you see the form and the narrative. However, when it becomes one which is almost close to arrogant, that is, is either us or nobody, the kind of nuances, which again I'll take back to Rwanda, so you see, I'll give and take. There is a section of the world that view a certain element of Banyarwanda as a national identity, who see themselves with a sense of exclusivity and almost bordering arrogant. You take that to Rwanda. I'm answering that in a very fairly academic way, and so then take it in on this continent. People tend to link some Eritreans and definitely a good proportion of Ethiopians away from the civilization, but they see themselves as sort of a special breed of Africans.
As funny thing you mentioned that.
Yeah.
As well, with an Ethiopian friend, actually the last week,
Yeah.
who is very proud at their country and all of that, which they should. But they mentioned exactly that, and I was asking her, it was a lady, I was asking her, what do you think you are so special?
You should marry her.
And she was like, because we are at the beginning of civilization.
She was being very diplomatic. As I said, that's a reasonable argument. But if it's the beginning of civilization, you would see it emerging as power in terms of intellectual authority. But no, it's sort of identity. It is, I'm told, some people think is about how they look. They think they're very beautiful. And unfortunately for Africa, which is a dark day for me, that some people think that the lighter skinned they are,
It's more beautiful.
they're more beautiful, or therefore they're more acceptable in society. They are.
Absolutely.
Now, for an African, where we even call it dark continent, if you're someone like that, then you really need to have a head examined. So then away from this, if we took it globally, I'm not sure about the many nationalist movements that should necessarily worry these global organizations. However, the other nuanced nationalism is sovereignty and indeed countries that have their own very internal prides, which again you put in Rwanda, but also a sense of patriotism where our kind of what is in our interest. Every basic independent nation state should be able to do that anyway, and it's not a problem. The issue then, if is this amongst us in diversity, the global with the global fraternity, what is bare minimum and what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and so basically that nationalism will sort of continue. The more inequality continues, the more institutions break down, and the more we have less responsible leaderships in nation states and indeed these global organizations, and less articulations of commonality of us together rather than many of us apart. This will continue, and that's why it's very important that the discussion you're having about these two global organizations that unfortunately represent the weaker side of global communities possibly are reviewed, and that's why I gave them a critical feedback to look inward for themselves, as a matter of fact, in their own interests. Sadly, my nation belongs to both, and I hope that a future UPC government will help them to turn it around.
All right, and I think our time is sort of coming to a close. If you could just say your closing remarks, what are the takeaways? What is it that our viewer today should think about all of this?
I think the viewers should be very confident that the founding party of this country is the future. And it's the future not because Ochieno says, but it's the future on the basis of the core ideas and foundations. Actually, if you like, we push this country to the nine-line movements, we push this country to Pan-Africanism, we push this country ideologically as a conscious African nationalist, African identities, African interest political party versus the exploitation of Africa. We did so with a very good example by making sure that we built Ugandan, we manufactured Ugandan, we protected Ugandan industry, we even went into near war with Britain over the economic emancipation of our people versus the others when we sought nearly to nationalize but also to control in a protectionist way. That can be discussed by implication, but at least we did that with the intention of making sure that we enabled majority of our citizens, and then we grew our economy for our people, and that we did that in every facet. And so we did that. Means that we have the capacity, means that we have the commitment in principle to do so. So we will do that again, and it's definitely my interest to do that. And that to do that, of course, we need a political party which is viable. So hence the urgent need for us to reclaim the leadership of the party, where we are at the moment, I think, in a very important phase after the Supreme Court ruling, and that once that is done and cleared, we shall become the examples in terms of bringing people together. And I must emphasize, the unity that I'm talking about is not only for UPC. The unity that I'm talking about is not for the youth that should come into the UPC and the youth and women, but that should also be as a good example to all other political parties, so that the opposition political parties, including our friends in the NRA, that our differences should be a political approach. That's the only difference about political parties, but actually that the commonality is the best interest of this country.
Okay.
And so for the nine-line movement and the rest of the other agencies, all those things really will come as part of what is it for us as citizens of this country. That requires leadership in the political parties, and in this case UPC, but that requires national leadership that I hope post-Museveni we should be able to have a genuine fresh leadership with a bit of energy, and that will be pushing this country to become part of the genuine partner in global politics for our youth and children of tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A friend of mine likes to say, I have absolutely nothing useful to add. I do not think I have something also useful to add to that. And I think he has given a position that I quite honestly believe in. The growth of our country as it is, and our communities and society are entirely dependent on the quality of people who lead and what their convictions are towards the collective, and as opposed to the individual. So thank you so much, sir, for honoring the invitation and being here with us today. And for every single person who's out there has been following, for all of those who commented, and whoever followed, even if you didn't comment, we appreciate you, because of the reason why we're here. So I pray and ask that you'll share that video link with all of your friends. Let them be able to contribute to the conversation. What do they think about what we talked about? Or maybe they have one or two things to learn from it, so together collectively you can grow this community. Thank you so much from myself and the Alternative Digitalk team. Have yourselves a very good night.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.